Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel.
So back when I was still researching about PC builds and components, I had to sate my hunger for gaming via mobile games in a not so powerful device and by watching other people play games. In between that, I also took the liberty to bring agony to myself by looking up at what other cool games are coming out soon. And in between that, I found out about Raji, an ancient epic. At that time, it was a game being developed by an Indian studio named Nodding Head Studios that looked amazing. And now, just convert the previous sentence into present tense. Anyways, the point is I have been really very excited for the release of this game, as this is the first time that I have seen such a beautiful game being developed by an Indian studio, a 12 or 13 member studio. That's amazing. But when the game finally released, I did not have a PC, and that explains the delay of my review. Anyways, fast forward to few weeks, I finally bought a PC and bought the game, and when I launched the game, I immediately knew that I won't be disappointed by it. Playing the game gave me the feeling that it is quite focused on telling a story, a simple but well executed story which is presented in a very creative way. Where modern games are flashing their jaw-dropping, breathtaking graphics in both during the games and during cutscenes, Nodding Heads chose to do it differently. They decided to go with simplicity and uniqueness. They went with shadow puppetry. And I have to say, I was surprisingly very pleased with it. I don't know about others, but even though I do very much enjoy the cutscenes in games, even though I am awed by their graphical advancements, I still a lot of time wish the cutscenes end fast or maybe even lose attention at times. But not here. This approach that Nodding Heads took helped them to successfully keep my attention glued to the story they want to tell. Also, you'll notice that even though the characters have voice acting, they don't speak during the puppetry scenes. Those scenes are completely narrated throughout the game, which again works perfectly to immerse me into the game. Talking about voice acting and narrations though, the person who voiced Ma Durga in this game, hats off to her. She did an amazing job. I loved it. Anyways, so the game is based off on Indian cultures and lores, and I love that it is like that. The last time I found something like this and that I thoroughly enjoyed was the Shiva trilogy by Amish. And now seeing how these stories and legends have been used to make such a wonderful game makes me even happier. The story shows the level of creativity of people involved in the game. The game really focuses on bringing out the Indian cultures to the masses. Apart from the narrators occasionally dropping parts of the legends of the characters they played, there are paintings to be found across the games which makes the game recite a short synopsis of the magical tale behind those paintings. Also the music, another fine choice to go with classical Indian music and tunes to make the game as immersive as possible. Okay, enough about the cutscenes and music. Let's get into the gameplay and other aspects that are more closely related to it. Starting with the graphics and art style of the game, it looks beautiful. It's not a game that looks realistic and all, but that doesn't mean the graphics are bad, or maybe I should call it the art style. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but the point is aesthetically the game looks very pretty. The levels are decorated with various beautiful and magnificent structures that have amazing designs on them, and they did a pretty well job in the detailing too. The leaves being blown away by the wind, the trees and fire dancing, the reflections on the water, they all looks in sync and beautiful, at least for most of the part. Combine that with the buttery smooth animations of the character and the AI, it was a massively positive experience. Coming to the levels, or should I say areas, they are filled with various platforming activities and puzzles which involves jumping, climbing, wall running, etc. But unfortunately, I kept on feeling that they could have maybe added a bit more to those elements, especially when it comes to the puzzles. I can remember only 3 variants of puzzles in the game. That's kind of lacking considering this is a platforming game at its core. Talking about the story, well, as I said earlier, it doesn't have a very complex story to go with. It's rather a very simple tale. But the thing is, even though it is true that a well-written, in-depth, complex stories are always enjoyable to watch or experience, simple stories can also be equally enjoyed. In my personal belief, a story's execution is the key to its success, and Raji does that wonderfully. It does kind of slips up at the very end, but for most of the part, the developers handle the story well. Now coming to the part which I believe is not the greatest strength of Raji, the combat mechanics. The combat in this game is sort of point and click style. Hope I'm using the correct term here, but basically to fight, to be more precise, attack here, all I had to do was just point my cursor to an intended target and press left or right click, which to be honest, I almost always spam just the right click, which also reflects the lack of depth in the combat system. I won't say it's entirely bad though. Facing different variety of mobs that needs to be dealt with in kind of different ways and combined with various acrobatics in attacking and dodging, it is definitely fun. But unfortunately, the fun doesn't last too long. Quite late in the game, I honestly got a bit upset every time the game seals off an area indicating a fight. But then again, this is a 3D platformer, so I guess the options are a bit limited when it comes to combat. And me being a DMC fan, well, it's probably catching my attention more than it should. Other than that, the another plus point that I can point out in the presence of 4 different weapons and each weapon working differently. Furthermore, there is a skill tree in the game. There is no leveling system though. So if you play the game, you will get skill points via little exploration in remote corners of some areas. Also, the skill distribution is a bit different here. I can't go explaining that now, but you can assign different sets of skills to different weapons, which is something that I liked. Okay, so I've talked a lot about the positives of the game and it's nearly the end of the video. Not always a good thing to end things in a negative note, but criticism has to come where it's due. If I have to describe the drawbacks of this game in one single sentence, I'd say the game takes 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Please note, not 1 step forward, 2 step back, it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Meaning the game is very well made, worthy of all the praises it can get, but it failed to reach the full potential in my opinion. I have already talked about the drawbacks in combat, so I won't expand anymore on that. But other than that, here are a few other things that the game lacked in my opinion. The lack in number and variety of puzzles. Furthermore, the puzzles don't give any rewards. They just give us a little backstory to express the bonds between the characters. It's not a bad thing, but they should have added a reward system in those puzzles. Like for example, the game could have given us items to increase the HP bar. They could have stitched that up with the puzzles as a reward for solving it. I remember in Prince of Persia the Two Thrones having such a system. That would have been much better instead of making us run around searching remote corners in random areas. Next, the second boss was very disappointing. The first boss was good, the final boss was also seemed quite good, but the second boss was no fun at all. Now I did say that I won't elaborate anything related to combat here, but I have to add a point that I forgot. There is no indicator for alt recharge. Frankly, I totally keep forgetting that there is an alt ability in this game. I just kept spamming the wall run and right click combo. No start menus. Don't know about others, but I always need a start menu in my games. Now the cutscenes, even though I did praise them a lot, it does have a problem. They are kind of blurry. Not sure if this was intended or not, but it was quite a bit it was quite uncomfortable. And lastly, the big problem. The game doesn't have a proper save feature. Or should I say there is something wrong with the autosave in the game. If you noticed just a few moments ago that when I talked about the final boss, I said it seemed good. This is because I never finished the game. I watched the ending in Seek Warrior's video. I was unable to play around the last 45 minutes of the game because of the saving issue. The autosave feature was working well, but I have some issue with my electricity or maybe with my UPS, due to which my PC abruptly restarts due to a bit of a voltage fluctuation while playing the game. And when I restarted the game, it started right from the beginning. I tried to see if I can get any save files, but I could not. I couldn't bring myself to play the game all over again. Don't get me wrong, I really like the game a lot, but in my opinion the game lacks replay value. I really hope they fix this in the sequel, which I strongly believe that it will come given the ending. Oh yeah, one very last thing. They could have added a flying mission, flying in the air while shooting down enemies and dodging stuff. They had an opportunity to make a stage like that. It would have been really fun, but they let it go. So, now for the final conclusion. Go get the game, people, if you haven't yet. It's a good little game and it's really cheap. The game is not much of a gamey game. It's more like a bedtime story that came to life. A tad bit dark for bedtime story maybe. But all in all, it is definitely a sign of the Indian game development industry moving to the right direction. Alright then, so thank you for making it to the end. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for future contents like this. I am actually aware of Corner Wrong that's coming out soon, and I'll definitely try to upload on time then. And yes, please do share it. Goodbye and take care, people.